The escape that wasn't a getaway. The narrative says Meghan Markle escaped the palace, fled the glare, dropped the constraints, traded protocol for freedom. But what if that escape was scripted, intentional, and part of a larger game of power? 2 press releases, 600 words, 1 institution. That's all it took for Buckingham Palace to reframe a catastrophe into control. While the world watched Netflix reveals and viral moments, a quieter narrative played behind the scenes. The Crown didn't panic, it pivoted. Tonight we pull back the curtain on Meghan's exit. Was it a spontaneous flight from media pressure? Or a chess move in which the palace responded with a well-rehearsed media machine? From the fairy tale beginnings through leaks, legal feuds, archetypes, and backlash, this is not simply a story of schism. It's a case study in institutional narratives, sabotage, and survival. The fairy tale beginning and the first cracks. When Meghan first became engaged to Prince Harry, the story was elegance. Hollywood star meets future king. The world watches a modern royal being born. The press collectively leaned in. She was new, charming, photogenic. The narrative was so compelling that tabloids softened, magazines smiled, the Commonwealth cheered. But the honeymoon was short. Within months, whispers of lack of staff trust, mysterious tensions with senior courtiers, and selective leaks started flickering in sensitive media circles. Some stories painted her as difficult, others said she was too inclusive, too bold. Critics say these leaks were palace-sourced pressure intended to reposition the narrative before it ran away. Over time, the initial glow faded into constant scrutiny. What Meghan wore, how she walked, when she visited charity events, how she smiled. The burden of being new in a centuries-old system made every small gesture seem loaded. The palace press machinery, many believe, subtly shifted to batten down the narrative. Palace walls, the media machine inside the institution. The British monarchy is not just a family. It's an institution deeply entangled with national identity and with media. Over generations, it cultivated a press ecosystem. The royal rota, trusted outlets, discreet courtiers leaking backgrounders, and soft signals passed off as insider perspectives. Leaks matter. When accusations of staff conflict or catfights surface, they often emerge from palace-adjacent sources. One long-standing theory, negative stories about Meghan were seeded to condition public sentiment, making later disclosures seem less shocking. Her critics argue she was held to different standards. Traditional royals could make missteps in silence. Meghan's were magnified in headlines. Some palace insiders reportedly disapproved of her presses for independent voice, her leveraging of podcasts, documentaries, interviews, which broke the old monopoly on royal narrative. She didn't just walk outside the line, she redrew it. To leave then was not an act of escape. It may have been the palace consenting to let her exit under terms it could still manage. Meghan's counter-narrative, Oprah, podcasts and archetypes. When Meghan sat down with Oprah Winfrey in 2021, it was more than an interview. It was a public reversion of narrative control. Over 2 hours, she claimed she was silenced, unsupported, and racially scrutinized. She said that during pregnancy, palace insiders questioned how dark her baby's skin might be. She claimed she'd asked for mental health help and was refused. She described the isolation of being inside an institution that spoke through silence. The audience numbers were staggering. 17+ million globally tuned in. The effect? She did more than push back. She shifted the frame, from royal victim to agent. But pushing that narrative came at a cost. Some framed it as too theatrical. Others saw it as betrayal. Many in the British press accused the interview of being soft, of ignoring behavior, of fueling wedge issues. A commonly quoted critic called it a soft-serving, soapy interview, giving Meghan an easy ride. Meghan's later turn to archetypes, her podcast and media engagements further advanced her narrative. She sought to build her own media authority, but critics saw it as branding, supporters saw it as self-defense. The scandal lens. Was she outplayed? Not everyone saw Meghan's departure as a principled escape. In many quarters, it became a scandal. She was accused of ambition, disloyalty, of wanting royal perks without duties. Some tabloids asserted she engineered the narrative, weaponizing victimhood. She was criticized for leaking, for interviews, for jumping the line. Some of the bullying allegations that surfaced after she left were dismissed by royal commentators as tabloid revenge. One story in Newsweek called the palace smear campaign notion ludicrous and said some of the bullying leaks likely weren't palace conspiracies. But others counter that those outlets have histories of royal-aligned slants. Could Meghan at times have misplayed her media path? Yes. Some interviews felt performative. Some statements lacked clarity. She sometimes seemed to escalate conflict rather than manage it. But the question remains, did the palace set the conditions for her path? The machinery behind the myth? To understand Meghan's crisis, you must understand the ecosystem she walked into. The royal household doesn't just coexist with the press, it co-governs its perception. There's the royal rota, an exclusive pool of reporters granted privileged access in exchange for soft boundaries. The palace press office, which releases official lines and strategically leaks others, and a sprawling network of royal correspondents, editors, and commentators whose livelihoods depend on the mystique. In that system, the palace never lies, but it rarely tells the whole truth. The machine works through rhythm, background briefings, photo calls, timely diversions. When Prince Andrew's controversies exploded, for instance, some insiders say stories about Meghan suddenly dominated tabloids again. Diversion by saturation. Palace aides call it news management. Critics call it sacrificial distraction. Either way, it's proof that in modern monarchy, information is the currency of stability. The leak economy. Leaks are oxygen to Fleet Street. In 2018, the Meghan Made Kate Cry headline ran on the Daily Mail's front page for weeks, shaping global opinion. Years later, Meghan's own Oprah revelation flipped it. She claimed Kate made her cry. Same event, two opposite truths, and no one outside that nursery ever saw the email chain. Inside the palace, that story wasn't random gossip. It was a signal. Courtiers used selective whispers to shape internal hierarchies, reminding newer royals that control of narrative equals control of influence. For Meghan, it felt like ambush. For the palace, it was containment. Never complain, never explain doesn't mean silence. It means outsourcing explanation. Let others speak so you don't have to. By late 2019, the Sussex versus institution split was visible. Harry and Meghan filed lawsuits against the Mail on Sunday and other tabloids for privacy invasion. That move, insiders said, crossed an unspoken line. Royals rarely sue the press. In doing so, the couple declared independence from the unwritten pact that binds crown and media. The Oprah detonation. March 7, 2021. Oprah Winfrey's garden, California sunlight, a single chair dividing the old and new worlds. 17 million viewers watched Meghan and Harry describe isolation, racism, and near-suicidal despair. The image of a pregnant duchess saying, "I just didn't want to be alive anymore," burned into public consciousness. For many Americans, it was revelation. For British institutions, revolution. Within hours, Buckingham Palace released a 58-word response. The whole family is saddened. Recollections may vary. 4 words that became historic. They neutralized outrage without confirming guilt. A masterclass in linguistic Aikido. The palace waited, absorbed impact, and moved on. The monarchy had spoken just enough to sound compassionate, not enough to sound defensive. It was the purest expression of institutional confidence. When attacked, reply like granite. The American rebrand. After Oprah came The Me You Can't See, Netflix deals, archetypes, and speeches about gender, equity, and healing. Meghan shifted from Duchess to digital CEO, turning pain into product. She spoke fluent California empowerment in a system built on British restraint. But success abroad deepened suspicion at home. British commentators accused her of monetizing royal heritage. American networks hailed her as a reformer. 2 nations, 2 scripts. Her critics cited declining UK approval. YouGov polls in 2023 showed Meghan's net favorability at minus 47 points. Supporters countered with US data, 60% positive, especially among younger women. One woman, two continents, two identities. The very duality that made her global made her uncontainable to the palace narrative. The silent strategy. Meanwhile, the institution doubled down on its oldest weapon, silence. When pressed about racism allegations, it launched quiet HR reviews. When asked about Netflix documentaries, it refused comment. By saying nothing, it reclaimed control. Modern audiences mistake silence for weakness. But within monarchy, silence is governance. That tactic worked. Polling after the Queen's death in 2022 showed public trust in the monarchy rebounded to 68%. The palace's calm contrasted with Sussex turbulence. Stability always photographs better than rebellion. Yet silence carries a cost. It buries nuance. It freezes pain into myth. And for Meghan, it hardened perception that the institution values reputation above humanity. The scandal lens, public perception versus private reality. Scandal thrives where certainty ends. By 2022, the story of Megxit had hardened into two rival myths. In one, Meghan was the woman who modernized a monarchy, but paid the price for daring. In the other, she was the outsider who misread the room, weaponized grievance, and fractured a family institution for fame. Public opinion split along geography. Across the UK, fatigue set in. Front-page feuds, late-night monologues, every whisper parsed like statecraft. In the US, she became a symbol of personal autonomy, a 21st century echo of Diana's defiance. Same woman, different mirror. Behind palace gates, sources quietly admitted a new protocol. No royal, working or retired, could grant interviews without cross-briefing communication staff. Freedom of speech had become a national security variable. Each unsanctioned quote risked months of strategic repair. The family fault line. Then came 2023, a year of contrast. The King's coronation, Harry's memoir Spare, and the first visible absence of Meghan from major royal occasions. At Charles's coronation, Harry sat 10 rows back, smiling but alone. Meghan remained in California with their children. Her reason, protecting peace and focus on family, was read by some as principle, by others as protest. Inside Clarence House and Kensington Palace, senior aides adopted a new term, strategic distancing, the art of acknowledging without amplifying. Photos show unity. Press statements show respect. The phone lines stay quiet. Harry and Meghan's Montecito home became a media fortress. They restructured their nonprofit, Archewell, to focus on compassion in action. Critics called it rebranding. Supporters called it healing. Either way, it was a lesson in reframing identity without a palace press office. The machine learns to adapt. Meanwhile, the institution itself evolved. A generation ago, royal press secretaries handled handwritten letters and fax briefings. Today, they run data dashboards measuring sentiment across millions of posts. Algorithms have become new courtiers. After the Sussex exit, Palace Communications created a dedicated digital response cell, tasked with monitoring online disinformation and identifying high-risk narratives. One insider called it PR meets counterintelligence. The lesson learned from Meghan was clear. Silence alone no longer suffices in the age of algorithms. So the palace now responds through subtle signaling. Timed photo ops, quiet releases, verified archival content. No direct fights, just calculated context. Even the late Queen's Platinum Jubilee was stage managed with digital savvy. Color-coded balcony appearances, selective crowd camera feeds, real-time moderation of social hashtags. It was less celebration, more algorithmic choreography. The power of story ownership. For Meghan, control of story became the ultimate currency. After Archetypes, she launched new media projects, each centering voice and self-definition. She spoke at conferences about digital safety, trolled headlines with humor, and deliberately avoided royal references. Her strategy, dilute the royal brand through sheer disuse. To a public used to royal mystery, this felt radical. She was turning the page in plain sight. Supporters called it courage. Critics called it irrelevance. But financially and culturally, the model worked. By 2024, the Sussex's content deals and advocacy partnerships were valued in the hundreds of millions. The palace learned from that too. Prince William and Princess Catherine's new social team shifted from press releases to direct digital storytelling, personal videos, Instagram reels, behind-the-scenes clips. In a strange symmetry, the institution modernized using tactics pioneered by the couple it once resented. The racism debate that won't die. No discussion of Meghan's escape can ignore the racial dimension. The palace response, measured, brief, defensive, was never designed to heal. It was designed to survive. 3 years later, polls still show a generational split. Britons under 35 largely believe race played a role in how Meghan was treated. Older voters largely do not. Inside the royal apparatus, diversity initiatives expanded quietly. New HR protocols, internship schemes, and recruitment across Commonwealth backgrounds. Publicly, they were tiny footnotes. Symbolically, they were the first admissions that something had cracked. Yet the silence persists. For an institution built on continuity, acknowledging bias feels like inviting revolution. So change moves at the speed of optics. Beyond the headlines, the legacy. 4 years on, the Megxit saga is no longer a scandal. It's a case study in narrative management. Universities teach it in media ethics modules. Executives reference it in crisis PR seminars. The takeaway, royal image is no longer protected by pedigree, but by proactive communication. For the monarchy, the episode was painful but productive. It modernized operations, clarified roles, and exposed how much the institution still relies on press appeasement. For Meghan and Harry, it was transformational, a shift from figureheads to free agents. They lost titles but gained narrative autonomy. And for the public, it was a mirror. People projected their own biases, hopes, and grievances onto a couple who wanted both privacy and impact. Their story became ours. How much of ourselves we're willing to trade for visibility? The evolving question. Today, the institution and the Sussexes coexist in a fragile truce. Occasional family appearances signal detente. Separate projects prevent collision, but the underlying tension remains. Who owns the royal story in the age of personal platforms? Future threats aren't scandal, they're irrelevance. If the palace can't compete with its own former members' digital influence, its symbolic power fades. If Meghan and Harry can't evolve beyond their breakup narrative, their relevance shrinks too. Both sides need new scripts. Closing reflection: the price of narrative freedom. In the end, Meghan's escape was neither a scandal nor a strategy alone. It was a collision between two worlds, an ancient system that thrives on silence and a modern voice that survives on speech. The palace learned that opacity no longer guarantees loyalty. Meghan learned that visibility doesn't equal control. Both learned that truth in the public arena is negotiated daily between clicks and crowns. So was it escape? Yes, but also a mirror. A mirror for us, how we consume, judge, and rewrite other people's lives in real time. Final line. Every fairy tale ends with freedom or forgiveness. But in this one, neither is guaranteed. Because in the kingdom of narrative, escape is never about leaving the palace. It's about outgrowing its walls.